The Game Award confirms that DLC, remakes, and remasters will be eligible for Game of the Year. Jordan Miller of VGC, the Game Awards has confirmed that DLC will be eligible for all of its award categories ahead of the shortlist being announced today. This Monday, producer Jeff Keighley's annual award show will announce the shortlist for each of the categories. In an FAQ post on the awards show's website, it has confirmed that DLC, expansions, remakes, and remasters are all eligible for the shortlist. The website now reads, quote, "The Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format of the content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters eligible in all categories. If the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination, factors such as the newness of the content and its price/value should be taken into consideration." End quote. Jury members of the Game Awards were made aware of the inclusion of DLC, remakes, and remasters ahead of submitting their nominations. The event's 10th anniversary gala celebration will take place at its traditional venue at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles and will be streamed live on various platforms. The Game Awards 2023 broke the event's viewership record with an estimated of 118 million live streams. Michael, huge. This year, I'm sure I'll be interested to see where it lies, because we had a quiet year this year compared to last year, right? And I think even compared going into next year, like next year looks like a banger of a year. Watch out, GTA 6. However, Michael, where are you at the fact that now DLC, remakes, and remasters are eligible for Game of the Year?
It really feels like they need their own category, at least for Game of the Year, right? We don't need to double the number of categories and say, here's this category. Here's the same category for DLCs, remakes, remasters. But it feels like at least for Game of the Year, we should have Game of the Year and DLC of the Year, or whatever you want to call it, right? I think that is the one I would say probably needs to be separated, because, yeah, this really feels like, I mean, this really comes down to Shadow of the Erdtree. That's the big one. That's one that people said probably going to be Game of the Year, maybe even the favorite heading in, or one of the favorites. And does it really deserve it? I don't know, because it's not an original work, Drew. So yeah, I think we just separate this out. Give me Game of the Year, DLC of the Year. I'm totally okay with that. There's some weird ones in here too, as you mentioned, new game seasons. So if, let's say Fortnite, can Fortnite OG be Game of the Year next year? Like imagine if that, I mean, obviously we have GTA, but imagine if that happens, right? Imagine if a game season wins Game of the Year. That would be absolutely crazy. It seems like maybe that could be its own category if you really wanted to. I think that'd be kind of interesting, right? Game season of the year. Now, that would mean the jury would have to play so many different games all that often. I don't know if they have that much time. But yeah, give me my own category, at least for DLC and remake of the year, because we're getting so many, Drew. We talk about it all the time. It's going to flood the market. I'm worried about maybe 2-3 years from now. What if we have a category that's 90% DLC and remakes and then one new game, right? And the new game loses, and you're like, man, that's just not fun. That's not what I want. I want to know about the big game of the year. I want to reward these publishers who made their own IP, who made something original, Drew. I'm worried we're going in the opposite direction.
No, absolutely. Can you imagine The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered winning Game of the Year? Like, yeah, that game is fantastic, and Last of Us Part 2 was my Game of the Year that year because it was a brand new game, Michael. Not a remaster, right? Not a new season of something. And then I get granted, when you talk about Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, it is huge. It is its own massive expansion. It almost feels like its own game. It's so big, right? But then if you get into that, like The Witcher 3 came out years ago, and then every time a new piece of DLC dropped, dude, it's 30-40 hours, right? So is that also now that's up for Game of the Year too, because it's 30-40 hours of a previous game as DLC? So this is where it really comes down to it, Michael. Michael, let me ask you this. Should Shadow of the Erdtree to be qualified for Game of the Year, should it be spun off from FromSoft as this is a separate entity, or is it a DLC? Would it, if they said separate entity, would it make it easier to win Game of the Year?
I think if it was a separate entity, I wouldn't have as many problems, but I don't want to go down this route where instead of getting $30 DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree becomes a $60 standalone game, right? That's the other slippery slope. That's why, just give us our own category, Drew. I'd be happy. DLC of the Year, hands down. It probably would, yes. I don't want it to take Game of the Year away from while we've had a quiet year, some bangers that have dropped this year.
Well, that's just it, right? There is Indiana Jones just around the corner, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, didn't make the category because the categories have already been picked, so that's out of the running. When you take a look at the other, Stellar Blade going to be in there? We'll see if anything's in there from Nintendo. Nintendo normally has like 2 or 3 titles alone for themselves, so it's one of those things, right? Will Dragon's Dogma 2 be in there? I constantly see footage of that still going on, right? So that's a brand new game, right? Will the Dragon Age be in there with the Veilguard? Does that have an opportunity to be in there? I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but very curious to see what the nominees are today when that drops later on. But we'll be covering that on tomorrow's episode because there's gonna be a lot to talk about to break it down, especially if Shadow of the Erdtree does get in. I understand why people will want it in, but I think the jury really needs to be careful what games they're picking for Game of the Year.